Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Richard and I we say this every time, but we're so happy to see familiar faces, new faces, and we hope that these talks are helpful. So this talk is I think the title was something like Seeing in the Dark. And we thought about this for various reasons, but part of it is, as we've been teaching in the last while, we have had more and more students who come who sort of express this idea that on one level they feel like they are, holding on, trying to just understand how to see, how to perceive, how to sort of get their bearings in a tumultuous world situation. And that's something that happens even when the world isn't in a tumultuous state. We just don't notice it quite as much because things are nice and easy and fun, and maybe fun, and maybe nice and easy. Anyway, things are normal. And so we don't notice the additional thing that it's very hard to see clearly. And so the idea of seeing in the dark is what we came to with this. And we wanted to start the talk with a wonderful story. And we may have a second one at the end of the talk. But there is...
That's the goal.
That's the aim, yeah. There is this in sort of Sufi worlds, and in the Muslim world, there is this wonderful sort of folk hero named Nasruddin.
Nasruddin.
Yeah, who is someone who there are many, many stories written about him, and they're often even told to children. And they're stories that are kind of have a twist usually. They're sort of silly a little bit, or humorous, or it's almost like he's described sometimes as the wise fool, Nasruddin. And one of my favorite stories of his is literally about seeing in the dark, and that is that he was this older gentleman that there actually is some evidence that he actually, someone named that, actually existed, but that he was someone people really revered, even though he had this sort of funny way of teaching. And so, the wise fool. And this one day, it had gotten dark outside, just maybe about 7 o'clock at night, and he was kind of concerned, so he went outside and he started looking under the streetlight that was outside of his house, because he was just there looking around in the dirt. And a couple of people came by and they said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm looking for my keys." And so they thought, well, okay, he's got to go out. He's got to lock his house. Let's help him look for his keys. So they start helping him look. Hours. And then, more and more people came, and kids came, and everybody was like looking under this streetlight that was there. And people were saying, "Are you sure you've lost them?" And, "Yeah, I know that I've lost them. I don't know where they are." And finally, after hours of this, one of the people said, "Well, where do you think you last had them? Where do you think you dropped them?" And he said, "Oh, inside the house." And everybody just sort of thought, "What are we doing?" And he said, they said, "Well, why are we here under this, outside, and if you drop them inside?" And he said, "Oh, well, there's light here, and it's dark inside." And so that was the story. Obviously, they could go inside the house and find the keys. And there was actually light inside also, because the light inside is representative of the light of who we are, or the light of intelligence that's actually there. And a part of the sort of meaning, I think, of the story is that we tend so often to not look internally, to not look in the light of intelligence that's inside. And instead, we either look at places that are familiar or places that we actually know we're not going to find an answer to something for.
Yeah, kind of an addictive obsession.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like looking on our phones.
Looking on our phones. Yeah. And so that's that story that, but it kind of also, to me, begs the question, well, what is light? What is it that sheds light on things, that allows us to have insight into truth, or allows us to have the wisdom that, that would give us answers to what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And
another great thing, at night when you're just getting tucked into bed, and if there's a bright light on, you think, please turn that thing off. And then when all of a sudden, there's no light, you go, what a relief. So
Yeah.
It must be, isn't that strange?
yeah.
We're looking for the clear light. Maybe it's because it's clear light.
Yeah, and then then it's like the artificial light, or the, something that's not artificial. So you could go down any sort of
Many paths.
metaphor with that, but that for oneself, the idea of really looking inside, where often we tend to avoid that sort of landscape within the physical body, within the mind, within the heart, and we have something that we are trying to do, trying to take care of, trying to solve a problem, and we look at something and we don't see it clearly, and we see it through eyes of sort of habit. We see it through eyes of, which might be like predisposition. We see it through eyes of prejudice. So things, we see things according to preconceived notions about other beings, other things, etc.
Yeah, and we're looking for our theory about what's happening.
Yeah, to support what we think.
You've already assumed what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And with yoga, we all know this, but that in yoga and in Buddhist teachings too, often it's said, everything you're seeing is an illusion. And so then that adds this whole other, sort of end to it. Like, how do we really know that what we are looking at, what we are seeing, and what we are then using as the foundation for our actions, how do we know that these are true and clear and well perceived?
Right. The theory that some people, that everything is an illusion,
Mm-hmm.
that theory must then be
an illusion. That's true.
So there you are, right back
Yeah.
in the bottom.
Yeah. So the angle that we wanted to take in terms of yoga for this is the idea of looking closely at what is meant in various different texts by the idea of pratyaksha, and to explore that more deeply. It appears, and many of us know it through the Yoga Sutra, at the very beginning of the Yoga Sutra. Maybe you could talk a little bit about places that it's described and how we look at perception, etc. And then we'll come back around to some of this.
We've got to activate the memory.
Do you need some oil?
Oh, right. So pratyaksha or pratyaksha is that's the theme of the day. It means right in front of your akshas, your eyes. And so pratyaksha is that which is immediate, it's your immediate experience, not only, of course, on the visual level, but all of the senses. And then if you're awake, it's whatever is presenting itself, even as you're neurotic or brilliant.
That happens occasionally.
Yeah, you're allowed to have brilliant insight. That's all what is actually happening in the present. And so I think where the pratyaksha is first mentioned in the Yoga Sutra, they're talking, let me see, you get these chitta, the pancha vrittis, which are pramana, viparaya. So the first of the chitta vrittis, and we're already confused, but we want to nirodha them, which isn't very nice, meaning to stop them, implying that they have a problem. And so we're already confused. And then the first of them is pramana, which is actually meaning correct or good perception. And you're going, hey, that's a good flip. And so the pramana has three characteristics. And the first one is pratyaksha, like pratyaksha, right in front of your eyes, pramana. Oh, viparaya is, no, pramana, excuse me. I'm nervous.
Early in the morning.
Yeah, so I actually have the...
You're going to cheat?
All the time, if that's what it takes. But unfortunately I can't see the...
glasses.
Okay, so you got the klishta. Oh, pramana viparaya vikalpa nidra smritaya. So those are the 5 forms of those things we want to nirodha.
Yeah.
And we always translate nirodha as suspend, which is implying that it's really neat to suspend them rather than to smash them or get rid of them or to kill them off. And but there are many schools.
And these are valid forms of perception. They're just not necessarily
so the first
beneficial
one is,
forms.
Yeah. And so the pramana, which is good perception, meaning you're seeing it pretty well, has 3 pratyaksha, which just means there it is right in front of your eyes. You're looking at it, and of course that's if you ever bother to actually look at it with awakeness, that's very advanced yoga, and people think, oh, and then anumana is logical inference, meaning, and we do that in everyday life, just practically walking down the street or all the actions of your body are based in, this practical, contextual information that we take it for granted until those funny days occur where it doesn't work. Anumana. And then agama, which is just means others, other beings, and you just look out in the normal, ordinary world, and not only do human beings count on agama, meaning what's going on over there, some trusted source, and you can find out what's going on over the hill, unless there's extreme deception going on, created by local politics, but it's reliance on the word of others, trusted others, and we do it all the time, even.
Yeah, and when years and years ago, when I was studying some of these things and working with you more as a student than before we met outside of class.
Oh, before we had an official.
Yeah. Yeah, we met in class, but both of us being so introverted, that was like in class, and then that was it for years. But anyway, that's another podcast or story that we'll never do. Um, Good. Yeah, but I just remember that that was one of the times when I'd been reading the Yoga Sutra, and you were talking about it in a class, and you were talking about pratyaksha. And the vision was so vivid that you gave of, what is right before your eyes. And the vision being that, and this happens all the time. It's like, you have something that you're looking at, and then you think, well, let me just get this out of the way, like pull back that curtain and look behind it, because what's real, what I really want to see is behind it, when in fact, it's what's right there that is what's going to give you even
if you were to actually look at what you're already looking at.
Because once you get behind the curtain, then you're going to pull that curtain back. You're not really looking at that either. You just keep saying, well, no, let me.
You get this habit.
Yeah. And that was it's such a vivid description. And I certainly know that feeling of sort of seeing something essentially in a way I already have deduced that it is to be seen, rather than looking closely. And that happens with relationships with people often, where you meet someone and you think, oh, they're this interesting person, or this boring person, or this curious person. And then they present, you interface with them time and time again. And you realize there's like so much more, obviously, to all of us and to them as well. But each time you see them, the tendency very often is to put them in the category that you originally saw them in, which can ruin relationships.
Right. Or you degrade, you create a new category after a while, and it's it's them.
Yeah, it's
and then you're still not looking at what is right in front of your eyes. So, for example, you say, well, as we sit here, what's right in front of our eyes? And so on a very practical table, we have a little table here, and on top of that another little table where there's a computer with all these funny little pictures on there. But some of them are very beautiful pictures. And so, and then we have a carpet, and then we have, the air, and all of this is like, it's what is, and if I were to actually look, or just look at it, that which is right in front of me, then I just have to go, wow. And that starts this deeper process of what dhyana, which is where you just you're steady on what's actually arising. And then you actually suspend the citta, and you start to, then the nirodha, you just go. And so breath is one of them, because breath is often rising and falling. So it's right. And by breath, well, do you just mean the air? And then that's a whole nother 1,000 years of well, is it? I can't even see the air, but I can feel the air. Okay, wow. But by breath, I can feel my breath in my tummy, and then either you should go to the hospital if that's, or no, I feel sensation, and so all sensation is categorized as breath, including the feeling between your toes and your ear and all of that. So, and that is considered, at that moment, that is to just pay attention to that. And normally we don't pay attention because we want to manipulate it to our ideals. That's not an ideal breath. Mm-hmm. It's, in fact, what's actually is pratyaksha rarely actually falls into any of the ideal categories that the mind has chosen. oh, that's a perfect breath.
Well, then
Well,
it's
that's the Kundalini, not the, you know.
and the pratyaksha, the essential characteristic is that it is instantly gone. It's not something that you can hold on to or that you can categorize or that because the moment you've perceived it, it's something else, just like everything else, and so that it keeps you on your toes or makes you nauseated or something if you if you start thinking about how do I have to stay really truly looking again, looking again, without it becoming an effort, without it becoming in and of itself a blockage to seeing what's there. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And
So that's when we kind of take advantage of our own, what was it, stupidity? Or, which, and, well, it's not me that's stupid, it's the mind. Even brilliant minds have stupid levels, because they, just all the levels are there. And so, I have a relative fixedness. That's why you choose to meditate, uh, depending on your particular cultural biases and things. I like sitting in a place, where it's symmetrical. So I like to go to, a temple, a mosque, and that's pretty, and then, and I have, so most, even yoga rooms, or there's sets that you sit down, and if you're visually totally asymmetrical, or you're sitting on a seat or that's tilted sideways, and you're correct. And so we do that whole stage, which you have to become better and better at, is the dharana. It's like your own. It's actually a religious stage where I just think that this is special, and it makes me focus my mind, and then you have that chance of actually looking at what's occurring, and then. And this is the most uncomfortable thing, or the most beautiful thing, particularly in the Sankhya tradition, as well as the Buddhist tradition, as well as in fact, all the yoga traditions that you'll find, and you'll find also the traditional misinterpretations, which that you have to then look at what it is that was making you look. Mm-hmm. And so then I have to, what is then arising is my religious conviction, that, this thing I've put on the table is very special. And it might be, it could be like, something that you inherited from somebody, so-and-so gave me that, and that's special. And it could be just like a beautiful rock from a garden, or, and then you have to look at that, and in looking at it, you see through it, and you let it go. This continuous process of looking closely, pratyaksha, with mindfulness, which is smriti. People think it means memory, but it actually means mindfulness. And then it goes away. And it's like, oh my God. And then you think, hey, there's actually nothing there. I've been turned into a Buddhist. But don't worry, if it's nothing, you don't need to get rid of it. Sorry.
Yeah, so there, in terms of practicality, or when there's nothing there, when you've seen through it. I know that pratyaksha, for many of us, we get to the first parts of the Yoga Sutra, and we don't necessarily get all the way through the book over and over again. But are there other references in the Yoga Sutra or in other texts that shed light also on this notion of pratyaksha. As you were talking, when you were talking about, yeah, we choose something like a place to meditate, that, and you were saying yes, and that, I set it up in a temple or whatever, which I've seen you do, and and my tendency is to set up in nature, and this is a predisposition of you, to have this religious experience, and the predisposition for me to have this sort of natural experience where I can pretend I understand interconnectedness when in fact I'm just sitting there on a cushion.
So most of my setups, if you look, there's
I've looked, yeah.
fantastic trees.
Yeah.
So I'm actually looking at the trees.
I never saw your eyes move.
And the trees. And
yeah. But there must be, to really go deeply into this idea of pratyaksha, because I know there's some other texts that mention it, or in the Yoga Sutra, I thought that I had come across some other sort of references to this notion.
Yeah. And so when you get to the end of the second chapter, you get to this stage, what's it called? Pratyahara, which is, again the stage where you're really starting to drop in, and you start to pay attention, and you're paying attention to that which is arising, and that is not only whatever your mental patterns are, which is thoughts, and you pay attention to thoughts. Thoughts are really, even wonderful thoughts, they're kind of amazing, just that they exist. And if you look closely at them, they're interconnected with the infinity of their background in so many dimensions. It's stunning.
And it's kind of...
But then also that which is arising as the body, arising as the perception of the body, sensation, so, and the Yoga Sutras, it gets you to look at, it doesn't want to leave certain things behind.
Yeah.
Which is very good at that. And then other texts, like the Sankhya Karika, which is, I don't know if I would recommend it anyone study.
Light reading?
Yeah, light reading. Yeah, I think as in a prison, a yoga prison, your posture wasn't correct. You have to now study the Sankhya Karika. But it's actually a brilliant text, and it does the same thing, and it's totally interwoven with the Yoga Sutra. But then you see in both texts that they're totally interwoven, or Buddhism is totally interwoven with them, and that is a scandalous secret, at least in modern political India, where there's a wave where anything the Buddhists do is stupid because they don't believe in anything. I mean, how stupid can you get? And immediately they fall into this. And so a lot of what we study in the you can find the actual poetry of these, what we would call religions, but I would say a high compliment is that this is art, a profound, beautiful art.
And, with this idea of the pratyaksha and of seeing through things, and then thinking back to the story of Nasruddin and the key, and his idea that it's under the light that you can look. I think part of what happens to us, and part of the meaning of that story perhaps, is that we have to practice looking in order to be able to feel safe looking inside, looking also at the unknown, which is, this fear of, that either not understanding something. And so, if you can see it and hold on to it, or at least say, okay, I've really got that, that gives you this sense of relief that in some way, until you are comfortable with looking at things inside where oneself, where things come up that you're not expecting. Looking inside of, what you're looking at, where you see these repeated layers. And, you often will say, here's this water bottle, and then you think of all the things that came together to make that, and that's seeing in a different way, rather than living on the surface. And in tumultuous times, or in complex times, or just in everyday easy times, having this sort of paradox where you can look at what you don't understand, what is the unknown, or what is the unexpected. Look at that and see that, and then not run away in fear, which is
It's
running
hard,
away,
honestly.
meaning, just stopping your perception and saying, okay, I'm satisfied, and that's that.
Right. There's this term Raja Yoga, and that means you got it. Okay. And you'll meet various, I don't want to say cult leaders, but I just said it. I just do Raja Yoga, meaning I don't have to practice anything. I would never have to practice. And that's kind of, it's almost a very humorous thing to say. And then they could always point out, well, it isn't me practicing. It's just this body and this mind, but they're not me. Therefore, and so they can stick to that because, like, who's talking right now? Oh, it's not me talking, it's this mouth, and it's not my mouth. And they just totally dump the consequences and the interaction with others. And so it's almost like this abstraction that keeps you out of your heart, keeps you out of relation with other beings, which is kind of like an interesting part of it.
And truly, this practice, like the practice of looking again, looking deeply, or the practices of yoga that encourage us to see what is actually arising, for instance, in the body or in the mind, to actually see it and experience it. And it takes practice. That's why I was saying, just even thinking, okay, I'm going to just spend a little time pratyaksha, seeing what's right before me, and noticing, I notice table, glasses, another table, computer, etc. I label them immediately and dismiss them, and then notice that, and then pause with that, and then go again, as a practice to see more deeply, so that when difficulties arise, we can go inside. And one of the texts that I am less familiar with, but becoming slightly familiar with, we are now near the Ayurveda Center in Asheville, North Carolina, which is a delight to be close by, and I'm aware of the fact that pratyaksha is spoken of in one of their seminal texts in context of Ayurveda, that the idea of pratyaksha being something that, here's a note from Dee that I'll read in a second. Pratyaksha being something that not only is a mental construct, which often we start thinking that as, thinking of it as, but that pratyaksha is something that in the Ayurvedic terms is felt in the core of the heart and is spoken of in terms of a tool that good Ayurvedic practitioners use to assess things. And so they themselves have this capacity to be pratyaksha from various...
Within a medical context.
Yeah.
Totally tuned into how you're feeling in detail through the whole body in relation to your mental states. And that's...
And emotional. I mean, one of the things...
mental, emotional is,
Yeah, and in the Ayurveda thing, the sort of visceral sensation, the emotional, intuitive body that we talk so much about as being integral to being, to waking up, that term, pratyaksha, is applied
to
there,
emotions.
To emotions and the intuitive knowledge of, and the intuitive wisdom of the heart, which is fascinating because it's, it gets into this dovetail thing where you're talking about something like pratyaksha as being, this mental state where you look and you look again and you look again, and then it becomes a mental game rather than an integrated mental, physical, heartfelt sort of process that you have at your fingertips if you can, take the time, have the courage to grab it and go for it.
Yeah, the emotions are, and so there are schools that think, emotions are stupid because it's all impermanent anyway. So again, that's the mistaken, ultra-detached, I'm enlightened, too bad for you, bow down to me, school. But the emotional states where you have these, what we call rasas, which basically mean relationships with all kinds of beings. And each one is considered like, beautiful, profound. Even anger is, and you can have like where you're playing in different games, but they're all considered divine, and most of them manifest for most beings, or most embodied in the human world. I don't want to, I think humans are probably the most difficult. They're manifesting, but because people they identify seriously with their bodies, they are unable to observe it. And so emotions become a huge problem. Like, now I'm angry. Now I'm angry that I'm angry. Now I'm angry that I'm angry that I'm angry. And this is...
and that's stopping to see the incredible and beneficial power of that state of emotion that we call anger, that can propel us into action, that can, if we do not project it out onto others or ingest it into ourselves.
Right, you become angry at yourself.
So, let's see. I'm going to do a thing here. Yeah.
This is in front of our eyes.
Yes, this is pratyaksha. I don't see the thing that you wrote, Dee. So maybe if you re-put it in the chat, that would be great. But and so, we come back to this idea of being in the dark. And what does that mean? Or being in a state of light in the mind, in the body. And in both of these, what does light mean? Like when you are seeing clearly with in the light, and what does it mean when you are in the dark? Because that's what we say when it's like, I don't know what to do. I'm in the dark. What does that mean? And what is it? And what practices do we have that can help us to find what those two things mean. And, I of course have my hypotheses as to what they mean.
Yeah.
But do you have thoughts on, like, because we go back to that story of being in the light with Nasruddin,
Oh, yeah.
and then saying, no, I can't see it because it's dark inside. Like, what is that really in terms of practices that we have, the asana practices, the philosophy practices, the breathing and chanting type practices that allow us to find equanimity in those two places?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the question is, by light, sometimes, and then there's the metaphor, as if 1,000 suns rose simultaneously in the sky. And, it's cloudy today. But that would really fry you, that would be painful, And you say, I'm seeing the... And so maybe it's a dark light. And so, and at the right time of day, it becomes dark, and you go, sweet. And so, it's a clear light, meaning I can't see it because it's totally clear. And so, always the mind will create some sort of identifying language. And the ability then to actually allow that and to see that is then allows this experience. And so there's this experience which is metaphorically, I'm having this clear light, but it's extremely bright.
Would you say that light could be associated with truth?
A reality, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it could be a metaphor.
For truth. And then how do we perceive truth? Yeah. And how do you perceive truth only mentally, or only emotionally, or only, in the body? Is that possible, or does it take, this combination of one's own experience, physical, mental, emotional, breath, etc., and interfacing with other things? Is that truth? Like, many people might wonder, like, what does truth mean? I've had students ask me that, what do you mean by truth? And truth is, to me, it's a thing that is a very intuitive experience that is based on historical knowledge, that's based on pratyaksha, but that's also based on a sense
that transcends historical knowledge and leaves it. And I can't resist the idea of pratyaksha, and then the word, my favorite term is yaksha, which are these, particularly here in Thailand, the yakshas, are these characters that be outside of temples. And so if you want to enter a temple, there'll be different forms of yakshas protecting the temple. And it's there, and some of them are very gentle in the older texts, but then they evolved as these very scary monsters that are just pure, they're just pure emotion, but with no actual object. So it's like pure anger, but nobody angry at anything. It's just like, and
it lets you see through it.
Yeah,
and they are protected.
Because you're not trying to push away the actual feeling, and it could be
or
through the whole body.
Yeah, you're not trying to also project it.
Yeah, and you're not projecting it out onto others. It's just like, And then you're actually feeling, literally, and you're feeling the types of thought patterns that are associated with it, as well as the sensation or the prana patterns associated with it.
Yeah. And so in doing these practices where we start really observing, where we start looking at things like the yakshas that are standing outside these temples, and we recognize that sense of intelligence that can be there, that what we're really looking for is this sort of thread or this root or this tethering within our own experience of being alive to something that is truth, that is the nature of reality. And then, it's like, oh dear, what's that mean? But but on one level, and I think one of the things we love about being in Thailand, because we live kind of in the jungle up here, it is in the jungle, is that, you see interpenetration. You live with it day in and day out, with the weather and we've just had a wonderful experience of having doves make a nest right outside our window. And there was a mother dove sitting there this one day, and I realized, oh, this is a dove on a nest. And then suddenly I look, and there are these two little heads that are all, bleary-eyed, and they don't have any feathers or anything. And long story short, of course, we overly committed to looking at them and trying to make noises to sound like doves ourselves. And just the other day, just 2 days ago, they finally, these two little doves that had been hatched out of the eggs, and then we have pictures of them with little teeny, like almost feathers, and then they look like the mother, and then is that the mother or is that a dove baby? Then suddenly they're gone, and it's this thing where both of us really were recognizing how much we wanted to hold on to having these little doves. Let me go get some sesame seeds and put them outside for them. They were very cute.
The effect on you just go,
yeah.
It's just like with little puppies or even human babies are cute, Yeah.
Human babies are very cute.
Yeah, and it's just like, and then that is of so much more, and you watch your behavior, and it's so much more important than, anything in terms of like your
and
feeling.
Here in the jungle, it's like you have this microcosm of all of these things that are going on in the world that, if you just look at these baby doves, or what blew my mind was when they got big, and there were two of them in the nest, and the nest had kind of fallen apart, but it was literally right outside our window. And the mother dove would be gone after a while for a few days. After a few days, she was sort of gone most of the day, and then she'd come back to feed them. And as a mother myself, watching in the wild what this mother had done, where she'd sat there with rain belting down on her as she was protecting the eggs, and she'd, been there with these little babies. And then they were getting close to being ready to go, and there are these two larger little babies, and the mother comes up, and it was a scene where they have a thing called crop milk that the mothers produce, which is so they have food that they eat, and it's very highly nutritious.
Mostly seeds
and things.
And
the babies just were like attacking the mother in her face, and she's standing there like,
but she belches the food into them.
I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is life, and I'm sitting here worrying about, what does pratyaksha mean? And it means that. It means seeing this depth and feeling it and not putting my preconceptions onto it and missing what's actually there, which is, yeah, a slightly different story as a human mother or as a human being,
Slightly.
but not that different. It's not as different as many of us would like to pretend it is. So, yeah.
Oh. Nasruddin.
The last story.
Yeah?
Yeah, this fits right in with his. Do you want to do it or do you want me to do it?
You can chime
Okay,
in.
I'll do it.
start
Okay,
Okay.
you go for it.
And so a large part of when Nasruddin was older, he was kind of a merchant, and he would bring things from one country into another, and whether it was from what is currently Persia into Turkey, or whether but he was crossing over borders
As a merchant.
as a
you would
merchant,
have like,
and he would bring, and there were restrictions at the border, and so he would fill up his stuff. And in that part of the world, there were often things that were very much, and still, herbs and things that were very stimulating that people would.
and then
Coveted.
cloth and
And
salt.
cloth and silks
Yeah.
and fantastic things, and he kept bringing them. And then at the border there was this one
And he had,
official
yeah,
who would inspect all of the content.
and they were carried on donkeys.
They were carried on
Because he
yeah.
would pack, they were pack donkeys, right?
Yeah, and then he would just lead the donkeys on and come back, and this would probably happen, 2 or 3 times a year, and it takes a while, and finally, after years and years, and they were both senior citizens, the border guard who knew him well, and kind of knew that he was a character, but had not actually found him violating the laws. And he finally asked him, you're free, I won't get you in any trouble, but can you tell me?
I know you're smuggling something.
I know you're smuggling something. What is it that you're smuggling across the border? And Nasruddin said, donkeys. Because he was only looking at the content of so he was a donkey merchant.
He was a donkey merchant.
Anyway, it's a joke here.
But it is how we see what we want to see and what we're programmed to see.
Yeah, you could upgrade that story to the airport. What is it you're smuggling in all these fancy rolly bags you have? I'm actually smuggling rolly bags and not drugs and things. Anyway.
Yeah. And so this idea of the pratyaksha, the idea of looking again, we wanted to close up the talk a little bit just by briefly, encouraging at the new year and at any time of year, but especially as this year changes one to the next, that you consider like the traps you fall into, as we are considering the traps we fall into with seeing things according to our preconceptions, our prejudices, and seeing them from the mind rather than from the full picture of mind, body, heart, and more importantly, other, or as importantly, other, and how when you perceive something and not with everything you do, but just in certain moments where there's a moment of doubt or a moment of hesitation, to just pause and look inside. And in so doing, that is going to be something you do in your own unique way, looking inside. In other words, considering what it is that is either driving you to perceive something or take action to do something in a certain way, that like what is it that you're getting out of this, rather than what's the bigger picture. And then to just step back from that a moment and think of some of these stories, like looking in the dark, or that you're seeing things as donkeys. I mean, as the goods on the donkeys, rather than seeing the donkeys themselves, and see how that can shift some of the ways that you start to not only see yourself, but that you start to see others. We were listening the other night to a wonderful, very sweet and short thing from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And in that talk and in another from many years ago, he was really mentioning the idea that what we have kind of lost in the world that is needed to be taught to children. He was talking about let's teach this to our children. And I see some of you right in front of me with wonderful children that are growing up. That to have, meaning the inner value of truth, the inner value of seeing others as important as oneself, the idea of cultivating compassion that is not only compassion that is good for people you know, but compassion towards all being, which His Holiness speaks of as and sort of unbiased form of compassion. So looking for what are my biases in the way I act, in the way I give forgiveness, in the way I do all these loving kindness practices, but do them in a biased way. Look at them, peel back that layer of misperception that we tend to fall into, and look at them inside yourself, in the dark, and then just take action or not, depending on what will serve the situation.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah. Seeing with compassion, seeing with a love, or seeing with, the Brahma Viharas.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and of course the tough ones, but then we have tough ones inside of ourselves too, which are just as obnoxious as the ones out there too.
And the idea of forgiveness, forgiving oneself, forgiving others as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this is being filmed just after the new year, and for us, this is important that we, as a community of people who care, that we help each other to start to see more clearly, that we start to consider and look inside ourselves and see mistakes we've made and make amends if we can, and but certainly not repeat mistakes once we've seen them.
But if you do,
then forgive yourself. There you go. Because that's how you learn. So we encourage you to look in the dark and look inside where there's a lot of light, and just keep looking. All right?